I have a love-hate relationship with this speaker. I think that for 99% of people, it's the only speaker they'll ever need, and if they extend their budget a little bit more, they can have something truly incredible. Let's talk about it. This is the JBL 306P Mark II. Again, a speaker I have a love-hate relationship with, and I really think I should talk about why. Now, first I want to get this out of the way. This video is sponsored by no one. I bought these speakers with my own money, out of pocket. If you want to support the channel, you can buy a hoodie or a t-shirt, dmstech.store, or support me on my Patreon. With that said, let's talk about this speaker and then about the system I mentioned earlier. Again, this is the 306P Mark II. It has, as you can see here, a pretty big waveguide, a 6.5-inch mid-bass driver. It's active with power in on the back, XLR 1/4-inch, a volume adjustment, and a few things for trim and gain. So if you're close to a wall and you turn down the bass a little bit. As you can also see, it's ported and very, very light. And a little bit of a fingerprint magnet. I mean, don't go touching the front of your speakers. You shouldn't be doing that often anyway. The setup I used this in was both of these speakers on Kanto stands, XLR cables running back to an SMSL DAC, and then the RCAs out of that DAC running over to an SVS SB1000 subwoofer. I treated the room with some very inexpensive homemade Rockwool panels. You can get these 12 packs of the Rockwool Safe and Sound insulation, frame it, wrap it in burlap or your fabric of choice, and you're good to go. From there, it's all about speaker placement, and once I had that down, these did a lot more than most of the speakers in my collection. Things like my Triangle BR08s, my Vandersteen Model 1s, even my SVS Ultras. Now, without a subwoofer, all of those speakers definitely do better, but not in the same ways. With this, the stage was always good, no matter where I placed them. I could sit anywhere on the couch and I didn't feel like I was just hearing the left speaker or just hearing the right speaker. Everything was very cohesive, very spacious, and still properly positioned. And while I feel like my Magnapans are a bit more detailed, they're also a bit more like a laser beam. You have to sit in just that perfect spot, otherwise things start to get kind of weird. But it ends up there is actually an objective reason for why these do what they do. We'll get into measurements and stuff in a second, but I want to talk a little bit more about the sound of these first. Like I said, detail-wise, I'm getting more out of the Magnapan LRS, though I guess that is a bit more expensive of a speaker too. The inverse of that being that the timbre on these is really, really good. They lean a little bit warm, and I actually tried calibrating them at 1.2 with Sound ID reference, but truth be told, I preferred their stock tuning a little bit more. Both are still very close to flat, but that stock tuning had just a hair more warmth. I feel like that brought some more life and body into the music. One of the rare cases where I feel like a speaker actually sounded better uncalibrated. But another thing to note is that this is technically a professional line speaker. If you have flaws in your music, if your music is poorly mixed, well, this is going to show you. You're going to hear it. And the speaker's not bright. In fact, it is pretty smooth across the treble, but if your track is mixed very bright, well, you're gonna hear some of the areas where it stands out. If your track is very congested, it's gonna sound congested. If the track is spacious, it's going to sound spacious. It's a speaker that makes me sit back and look at not only my speaker collection, but my headphone collection and wonder, something really is missing here. And it's this. But if you want something that's going to sugarcoat everything you listen to and make everything sound fantastic, well, it's not that. It's something that's going to tell you the truth. But man, does the truth sound beautiful. I do specifically think, though, that these would be excellent for home theater, partly because they cover such a wide area in the room without having to be pointed directly at who's listening. Like, if I'm on this side of the couch or that side of the couch, I feel like I'm not really missing out versus the person in the sweet spot. And now that we're kind of getting in that direction, let's talk about why that is and go into objective sound. You know what? Let's have Madbot do it. Madbot, give me a full objective analysis of the JBL 306P Mark II, please.
I told you not to call me by my government name.
Okay, we both know you do not have a birth certificate. Show me the squiggly lines.
Say please first.
Please show me the squiggly lines.
That's better, meatbag. The LSR-306P Mark II is an acceptably performing speaker, which by the standards of the audiophile industry makes it exemplary. It has a relatively constant directivity, indicated by the relatively flat directivity index, both for the early reflections, which are near to its axis, and for the full sound power, which is the radiated output of the speaker in all directions. More commonly, speakers at this price point would be shambolic in this respect, tending to have very large errors in directivity, which turn into errors at the eardrum. The 306P seems to have a well-designed crossover, combining its wave-guided tweeter with its midwoofer. The most annoying standout feature is simply the on-axis response. There are multiple sharp dips in the response, which may be either breakup modes of the woofer or resonances of the port. However, for a speaker of this price, it is honestly quite well performing. Viewing the contour plots, often incorrectly called polar plots by people who have never seen a pole or a plot, we see a speaker that is, in general, quite constant on the horizontal axis. People sitting within as much as a 60-degree window of the on-axis will be getting essentially the same sound as someone sitting in the sweet spot. This is simply good speaker design. Whether this is the ideal width for the speaker beam is not entirely certain, but it is certain that this is better than having an irregular beam shape. Vertically, as with all non-coincident, that is to say coaxial for you, speakers, this has flaws. Going above axis means that you will inevitably have a suck-out in the mid-range caused by the crossover between the tweeter and the woofer. Moreover, the waveguide is clearly not as well designed for vertical directivity control as horizontal, showing some flaring off-axis, meaning that there will be a perceived peak in response if one is off-axis vertically. Nonetheless, it is acceptable, and again, for what it costs, surprisingly good. The speaker's bass extension is honestly something of a highlight, both for its size and for its price. This is a speaker that could viably be used without a subwoofer, so long as the playback level was not too nauseatingly loud. Ultimately, this is a speaker which simply does measure quite well. It is flawed in the way that all cheap speakers are inevitably flawed, but it is less flawed than any other speaker I have seen at its price point, and I would firmly recommend it.
There you have it. So the 306P Mark II, is it a speaker you should consider? Well, at this point, it's kind of up to you. I feel like we kind of laid it all out on the table. Here on, it's kind of up to you to make an informed decision. For me, about a week or two after I got this speaker, I posted in several chats that almost all of my towers were up for sale, and a good chunk of them are already gone. I'm getting a second set of these to set up at home. One set's going to stay here at the office, and eventually I'd love to build an Atmos system out of this speaker. Needless to say, I like it a lot, though it's definitely not going to be for everyone. It depends on what you're after. I certainly feel very comfortable recommending the 306P Mark II, especially if you're using it in a professional environment or are just an audiophile craving that next level of the experience without breaking the bank. Again, I do highly recommend using this speaker with a subwoofer crossed over pretty low, and of course, room treatment always matters. So I think that's it. I think this is gonna wrap this video up. Guys, if you liked it, please leave a like down below. Comment letting me know what you wanna see in the future. If you wanna get active in the community, you can have the forums or Discord, both linked in the video description. As always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Till next one, guys. Peace.